Hola, mis queridos amigos, y bienvenidos a mi casita. Entrar, por favor. I was expecting you. Come on in, friends.
Friends. So it's still August, and we're in our third week of our International Month. So this week we're going to be looking at a recipe from Mexico or de Mexico. So we've all heard of the infamous tacos. Today we're going to do it's actually a very simple recipe that you can add or subtract any of the ingredients. And the wonderful thing about tacos is that you can add almost anything. So, in my home, I don't have any carnivores. So we're actually going to be using a substitute for the dinner that I'm going to prepare for my family. But you can use ground beef, ground turkey, or ground chicken if you would like. I'm going to use, come on over in here. So there are these wonderful beefless ground beef additives that you can buy at almost any grocery store. You could buy it at Trader Joe's, Target, Safeway, Giant. Just look for it in your in the frozen vegetable section. Okay, so we're going to be using we'll just call it ground beef, just so I don't confuse you. And then over here are the rest of the ingredients that we'll be adding in later into our tacos after the meat has been cooked. Okay, so let's start. I actually have two pans here because we're going to be cooking the beef first, and we're also going to be cooking some sweet corn to go along with our tacos. Okay, so I'm going to add in just a hint of olive oil. Of course, now the words are slipping out of my mind. If you have a non-stick pan, that always works better when working with ground beef or chicken or whatever additive you have. So, and I know it may look a little funny, but for those of you that have never tried tofu before, it actually really looks a lot like ground beef. And I wish you could be right here in my kitchen to try it later with me, because tofu, the wonderful thing about tofu is that it can absorb almost any flavor that you add to it. Okay? All right, so I've already turned on my stove. I'm going to put it on high so that the olive oil will heat up a little bit, and then we'll be adding the tofu or ground beef momentarily. So I'm not going to add, you can buy those taco seasoning packets, which are actually really good, and I do use it from time to time. But if you happen to not buy it at the grocery store for buying or for making dinner that night, it's okay. Salt and pepper are perfectly okay for this easy recipe to make at home. All right, so it looks like my oil is heating up a bit, and I'm just going to add in my ground beef. And this substitute that we're using cooks up very, very quickly, and it still has, it seems like a little bit of fat. So, and you know, the thing with tofu is that there's no rules. If you wanted to do half tofu and half ground beef, that's perfectly acceptable as well. So, but the important thing for tacos is you want to make sure that you chop up the meat so you don't get any big chunks. You want to make sure that the meat is cooked up all nice and small. So I'm just kind of chopping it all up as it's going to start cooking here in the frying pan. Okay, and then after I do that, I'm just going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. Now, I have to admit that Mexico is actually one of my favorite countries. My family and I have actually traveled quite frequently to a small island called Cozumel, and the people of Mexico are absolutely loving, well receiving, warm, so it's definitely become, at least my family's second house or second home. Okay, so the meat's starting to sizzle a little bit, so we're gonna keep that going. One of the other things that you can also add to the meat are yellow onions or red onions. So I'm not gonna add the onions to the meat because I'm gonna add it actually to the corn that we're gonna be cooking together. So excuse me while I open up my spice cabinet or my secret cabinet. And as I mentioned, you can just add salt, just a hint, not too much because you don't want your friends to think that the chef fell in love. And then we're gonna add a little bit of black pepper. Okay? And if you feel very, very adventurous, you could always add red chili peppers as well. Okay? So we're gonna let this cook over medium-high heat. Okay, and it's just enough to make sure that your meat or protein will brown all the way through. All right, so while this is cooking, I'm also had another pan prepared, and I'm gonna add a little bit of olive oil to that. Okay, and if you come over here, I actually already have a red onion chopped up. Half of it we're going to add to a 1 8-ounce can of corn. Okay, so we're first going to cook up these onions. And again, you can use yellow onions or red onions. In Mexico, red onions are very, very prominent in all of their cooking. They do have a lot more flavor than a regular red or yellow onion. So whatever your preference is perfectly okay. But I thought we would add the red onions to the corn just to add like a little more zest to our meal for this evening. Alrighty, so we'll wait for that to kind of sizzle up a little bit. We're going to keep cooking up the meat. Let me get another wooden spoon here. I'm so happy you're in my home with me today. Alright, so we're going to start that on high. The other wonderful thing about tacos, as I mentioned, you can add or subtract any flavor or ingredients to it. So we're gonna have meat, the corn. We're gonna make some quick guacamole. I have some greens, and then we also have some rice, which is I already pre-prepared it in my rice cooker. I prefer brown jasmine rice. But it could be any type of rice. You can use enriched white rice, jasmine rice, whatever your fancy is, it's perfectly okay. There are no rules in taco making. Okay, so it looks like our meat is definitely loving that heat, and it's starting to brown. And look at these onions. They're starting to make friends with the olive oil in that frying pan. We're going to let that sizzle a little bit. Now, the other thing in eating tacos is that you can eat it any way you like. And you can wrap it however you like to. We're going to be using flour tortillas, which I will show you. But this is also something fun that you can make at home if you just wanted something to nosh on, and you can use smaller tortilla chips. Okay? I personally am not a big fan of hard shell tacos, only because I find that they're messy, but that's something that you can do at home too. Okay? Alright, so the onions are starting to cook a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and add the corn. Okay, see, look how beautiful those colors look together. Like many countries, Mexico is a very colorful country. From all of their artisanry down to their culinary foods. All right, beautiful. So the prep time for this meal is really only about like 10 or 15 minutes, and the cooking time is the same. The longest thing that takes to cook is the rice. And I'm a big fan of using a rice cooker because you can just put the rice and water in there while you're doing everything else. So just something to think about when you're planning your taco dinner or lunch for your friends. Okay, and I'm just gonna lower the heat here a little bit. All right, and the secret with the corn is you do want it to brown just a little bit, but you don't want to overcook it. Okay.